It is completely invisible. But I am willing to bet you are carrying a massive weight on your shoulders right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you cannot see it in the mirror. It doesn't show up on a medical scan. And nobody walking past you on the street would even know it's there.
Right, but you feel it.
You feel it constantly. It is this pervasive, heavy, sort of low-level hum of exhaustion. And it just never seems to fully dissipate, right?
Yeah.
Even after a full night of sleep or, taking a weekend off.
Yeah, that hum is just always there in the background.
Exactly. And the ultimate paradox of your life right now, the thing that makes this exhaustion so profoundly confusing, is that you are living in an era where literally everything around you has been meticulously engineered to make your life effortless.
I mean, it's true. It's a total paradox.
You have apps that bring hot meals and fresh groceries to your front door in under 20 minutes. You have algorithms predicting what you want to watch.
Smart appliance, automating your chores, digital assistants, managing your schedule.
Yes. The friction of daily survival has just been systematically eradicated. And yet, despite all of this unprecedented convenience, you probably feel more rushed, more perpetually behind, and more deeply drained than at any other point in your life.
It is, without a doubt, the defining contradiction of the 21st century. I mean, we have constructed this staggering, invisible infrastructure of convenience, right?
Right.
A vast machinery explicitly designed to liberate us from physical toil and logistical friction.
But it hasn't liberated us at all.
Not even a little bit. The implied contract of the digital age was that all these optimized shortcuts would, inevitably deliver us into an era of unprecedented leisure.
Like you were supposed to be working 3-day weeks by now, right?
Exactly, spending our afternoons painting or walking in the woods. But the lived reality is the exact opposite. We are just profoundly depleted.
So why is that? Why did we get it so wrong?
Well, the core misunderstanding is that we continue to view fatigue as a purely physical equation. Like, the legacy blueprint in our mind says, you lift heavy things, you sweat, your muscles break down.
And then you get tired.
Right. But the exhaustion you are describing, that invisible weight the listener is trying to carry today, has very little to do with physical exertion.
It's something else entirely.
It is an entirely cognitive burden. It's the exhaustion of living in a state of continuous low-grade mental friction, where the brain is constantly processing just an endless stream of micro-decisions and digital inputs.
Which brings us to the core of what we are unpacking today. We're doing a deep dive into the concepts and frameworks presented in a truly fascinating piece of work called The Currency of Time: Reclaiming Peace in a Crowded World.
Such an important framework for right now.
It really is. And our mission for this conversation is highly specific. We are going to deconstruct exactly why a world absolutely overflowing with time-saving technology leaves so many of us feeling completely overwhelmingly crowded in our own minds.
Crowded is the perfect word for it.
Right. But more importantly, we want to extract the underlying mechanics of this exhaustion so we can give you, the listener, the conceptual shifts required to actually reclaim your peace of mind.
And we really need to establish a very clear boundary right at the outset regarding what this discussion is not.
Oh, yes. Please.
We are not here to offer you another list of hyper-optimized life hacks to make you process emails faster.
Thank goodness.
Right. We are not going to talk about color coding your digital calendar so you can squeeze 4 more productivity blocks into your afternoon.
Because that's kind of what got us into this mess, isn't it?
Precisely. That deeply ingrained, do more, hustle harder, optimize everything mentality is the precise mechanism that generated this crisis in the first place. Trying to solve modern exhaustion with more efficiency is like trying to put out a fire by throwing gasoline on it.
Throwing gasoline on the fire.
Yeah. The objective here is not to help you transform into a more efficient, frictionless machine. The objective is to help you build a more conscious, sustainable human life.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because to truly grasp the absurdity of our current baseline, we really have to look backward for a second.
Right.
Take a moment to genuinely consider the daily reality of our grandparents or, our great-grandparents. Objectively speaking, the physical demands of their lives were just staggering compared to ours.
Oh, absolutely brutal.
Just the act of washing clothes often consumed an entire day of boiling water, scrubbing, and wringing out heavy wet fabric.
And preparing a meal meant starting entirely from scratch. There were no food processors, no microwaves.
No pre-chopped ingredients delivered in a cardboard box with ice packs.
Exactly. Maintaining a household required relentless, grueling manual labor.
And yet, when you read their letters or examine the sociological data from those eras, There is this undeniable sense that they possessed a psychological commodity that has gone entirely extinct in our modern lives.
Breathing room.
Breathing room, yes. They had actual unallocated mental space. Like they sat on porches, they tinkered with hobbies without trying to monetize them.
Which is such a foreign concept to us now.
It really is. Now, we have machines handling the laundry, the dishes, and the sweeping. But the phrase that defines our generation, the automatic response we give anyone who asks how we are doing, is always, sorry, I'm just so busy.
We've outsourced the labor, but we completely lost the breathing room.
Completely. So what is going on there?
Well, what's fascinating here is the fundamental misunderstanding of what we are actually saving versus what we are spending. We successfully eliminated the physical labor, yes. The muscles are resting.
Right, the washing machine is doing the work.
But we immediately replaced that physical load with a cognitive load. Think about the neurological state of someone washing clothes by hand 70 years ago.
Okay.
Their hands were occupied with a repetitive, rhythmic task, but their prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex processing and decision-making, was largely at rest.
Oh, wow. So they were physically tired, but mentally resting.
Exactly. They could process their emotions, they could let their minds wander, they could daydream. The physical body was working, but the mind was wandering in an open field.
And contrast that with today.
Right. Your washing machine completes a load in 45 minutes. But what is your brain doing during those 45 minutes?
I mean, you are likely sitting on your sofa, physically motionless, but cognitively sprinting.
Yes. Sprinting. You are toggling between 3 different communication platforms, answering a work email, reading a distressing news alert about some geopolitical crisis.
Calculating your monthly budget, trying to remember if you need to order more paper towels.
The physical body is completely sedentary, but the central nervous system is running a marathon through a minefield.
And that is why we are so incredibly tired. The tiredness is not coming from the muscles. It is coming from the cognitive overload of having way too many useless inputs constantly bombarding us.
It's the modern psychological condition of having 65 mental tabs open at once.
And half of them are playing audio, and you don't know which ones.
Right, exactly.
There was a brilliant analogy used to describe what this does to our internal landscape in the source material. We treat our brains like a rented room after a children's birthday party.
It perfectly captures the sensory and emotional residue of our daily digital habits.
It really does. Imagine walking into a community hall just after 30 sugared-up 6-year-olds have left.
Total chaos.
Total chaos.
Yeah.
The party is technically over, but the room is an absolute disaster zone. There's a plastic toy in the corner incessantly playing a repetitive electronic jingle.
The floors are coated in a layer of sticky spilled juice.
Half-deflated balloons are scattered everywhere. The atmosphere is chaotic. It smells like artificial frosting. And it is going to require immense effort to scrub clean.
And that is exactly what our prefrontal cortex looks like by 2:00 p.m. every single day.
Every single day. We open the doors of our attention to all this chaotic, sticky, noisy information, the outrage-inducing tweets, the urgent but unimportant notifications, the frantic group chat.
And then we just leave it all sitting there in the middle of our mental living room.
Just sitting there.
This introduces a critical distinction regarding how we actually lose our time. We tend to conceptualize wasted time as something massive and dramatic.
Like taking a 3-hour unplanned nap.
Or spending an entire weekend binge-watching a television series. And when we do those things, we feel a sharp pang of guilt because the loss is obvious.
Right, you can see the hour is just gone.
But that is rarely how our peace of mind is actually destroyed. We don't lose our time in massive, dramatic chunks. We squander it.
We squander it.
We squander it relentlessly, carelessly, in microscopic increments. It's the ostensibly harmless check of a social media feed while waiting in line for coffee.
Or the quick 2-second glance at an email notification that pops onto your screen while you're eating breakfast with your family.
It is the delusion of the quick check.
Oh, man. We tell ourselves, I'm just going to look for 2 seconds.
Precisely. We evaluate the cost of that interruption solely by the physical time it takes. 2 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute. But what we fundamentally fail to calculate is the cognitive residue.
The sticky juice on the floor.
Exactly. Every single one of those tiny checks is an invitation. We are opening the door and inviting that specific piece of information into the room of our mind.
Even if it's just for a second.
Even for a second, you think you are just glancing at a frustrating news headline for 10 seconds. But that headline, that specific piece of sticky spilled juice, does not evaporate when you lock your phone screen.
Wow.
Your brain has to metabolize that information. It sits in your working memory, quietly utilizing neurological resources and generating a low-level stress response long after you have theoretically moved on to another task.
So we squander our attention, which is really the only mechanism we have for actually experiencing our lives, on harmless-seeming updates that leave a massive cognitive mess behind.
Exactly.
So what happens when we actually internalize that reality? What happens if you, listening right now, suddenly decide to adopt an entirely different posture toward your own attention?
It requires a major shift.
It does. Like, what if you realize that just because an app sends you a push notification, or just because an email lands in your inbox, it doesn't mean it has an inherent right to occupy space in your head? What if you started acting like a deeply discerning bouncer, standing outside the nightclub of your own brain?
That is the conceptual pivot that changes everything. If we connect this to the bigger picture, adopting the role of the bouncer forces a radical renegotiation of our relationship with the digital world.
Because right now, we just let everyone in.
Society currently operates on a default open-door policy. If a device pings, buzzes, or flashes, it is granted immediate, unquestioned entry into our conscious awareness.
We surrender our focus to whatever algorithm or advertiser shouts the loudest.
But if you genuinely recognize that your baseline peace of mind is directly proportional to the cleanliness of that inner room, you must become utterly ruthless about what gets past the velvet rope.
You have to start differentiating between the rare inputs that genuinely inform or enrich you and the vast, overwhelming majority of inputs that simply crowd you.
Inputs that agitate you and leaves sticky residue on the floor.
But wait, let me push back here for a second. Look at the actual math of the modern world. Technology has undeniably eliminated physical labor. The washing machine genuinely takes hours of manual scrubbing off my plate every single week. The grocery delivery app legitimately saves me a 40-minute round trip to the supermarket.
Right.
So if we're saving all these massive blocks of physical time, why isn't there a massive accumulating surplus of hours sitting in our psychological bank accounts? Where is that time actually going?
To understand that, we have to look at the economic principle of induced demand.
Induced demand. Okay, explain that.
It applies just as ruthlessly to human attention as it does to urban infrastructure. In city planning, there is a well-documented phenomenon. If a highway is terribly congested, the logical solution seems to be adding 2 more lanes to accommodate the traffic.
Sure, build more lanes, solve the traffic.
But when you build those extra lanes, it doesn't solve the congestion. The new, wider highways simply incentivizes more people to drive.
I see.
And within a few years, the 10-lane highway is just as gridlocked as the 6-lane highway was. The exact same mechanism governs our time.
Technology clears a space.
Yes. It automates a chore and frees up a theoretical hour. But human nature, combined with the pressures of modern capitalism, abhors a vacuum.
So instead of leaving that newly freed hour empty,
Instead of allowing it to serve as much-needed breathing room or recovery time, we instantly fill it. We induce new demand.
we invent new microtasks, we consume more digital noise,
Or our workplaces simply increase their expectations of our output and responsiveness.
because you're working faster, so you can just do more work.
Exactly. The time was technically saved in the physical realm, but it was immediately and completely consumed in the digital realm. The highway got wider, but the traffic just got worse.
Okay, so if the highway of our brain is completely congested and our mental rings are filthy with sticky juice, the natural, desperate human instinct is to try and fix it. We want to regain control.
We want a quick fix.
Right. And culturally, where do we immediately turn to solve this? The morning. We have this collective obsession with the idea that if we can just aggressively optimize the first hour of the day, we will conquer the remaining 23.
It's everywhere.
But looking at the frameworks we were discussing, this obsession with the morning is essentially trying to fix the roof while the foundation is sinking, isn't it?
It is a profound misallocation of our restorative energy. I mean, we have built an entire industry around the mythology of the flawless morning routine.
Oh, totally. The dominant cultural narrative dictates that success requires waking up at 5 a.m., plunging into an ice bath,
Drinking a highly specific concoction of lemon and electrolytes.
meditating for exactly 20 minutes, writing in a gratitude journal, and doing a high-intensity interval workout, all before the sun breaches the horizon.
It's gotten to the point where if I don't meditate and read 10 pages of a Stoic philosophy book by 5:30 a.m., The internet makes me feel like I've failed at life before I've even brushed my teeth.
Right. But frankly, most mornings I am way too tired to even comprehend reading, let alone executing a 10-step optimization protocol.
And that exhaustion highlights the fundamental flaw in the morning routine obsession. The day does not actually begin in the morning.
It does.
Biologically and psychologically, your day begins the night before. If you are waking up already deeply fatigued, already feeling a sense of dread, already emotionally disorganized, and carrying that invisible weight you mentioned earlier, the damage has already been done.
So an expensive green smoothie and 10 minutes of mindfulness simply cannot repair the structural neurological damage caused by how you ended the previous evening.
Exactly. It's too late by then.
So the focus is entirely backward. People don't necessarily need a more aggressive, optimized morning routine. What they desperately need is a much gentler ending to their day.
A gentle landing.
Let's break that down mechanistically.
Yeah.
What does a gentle landing actually look like in terms of our brain chemistry versus what we normally do to ourselves at 10:30 at night?
The most accurate analogy is the descent of a commercial airliner. A plane traveling at 500 miles per hour at 30,000 feet does not just suddenly drop out of the sky and slam onto the runway.
That would be catastrophic.
It requires a long, calculated, gradual descent. It has to reduce altitude, bleed off speed, deploy flaps, and prepare the cabin. The transition from high-speed flight to a complete stop requires a massive, intentional reduction in kinetic energy over time.
Okay, now analyze how the average adult attempts to end their day.
Right. We spend the evening scrolling through highly polarized, high-stakes political news or watching visually intense, anxiety-inducing television dramas.
We lie in bed answering one final, complex work email.
Or we mentally rehearse all the stressful conversations we have to navigate tomorrow. We keep the brain's processing speed at absolute maximum until the very last second.
The physical body might eventually collapse into bed, but because the night ended with a barrage of open loops and high-stress neurological inputs, the mind never actually lands.
Never. Your central nervous system is still circling the airport, burning fuel all night long.
Wow.
The architecture of your sleep, the vital transition between light sleep, deep restorative sleep, and REM, is fundamentally compromised because your baseline cortisol levels never dropped.
I understand the logic of that perfectly, but I have to bring up a reality that I know almost everyone listening struggles with.
Okay.
We intellectually know we should put the phone down and read a pleasant book at 9:00 p.m., but we don't.
We really don't.
And it's because of that phenomenon called revenge bedtime procrastination.
Yes, a very real issue.
You spend your entire day serving everyone else's needs. You answer to your boss, you manage your kids, you support your partner, you respond to clients. From 7 a.m. to 10:00 p.m., your time does not belong to you.
Not at all.
Finally, the house is dark, the emails stop, and your brain screams, "This is my time."
Right.
So you actively choose to stay up until 1:30 a.m., watching garbage TV or scrolling through TikTok, fully aware that you're going to be absolutely miserable the next morning. It is self-sabotage. But why is the urge to do that so overpoweringly strong?
Because revenge bedtime procrastination is not actually a failure of discipline. It is a desperate psychological rebellion.
A rebellion.
Yes. When your waking hours are entirely dictated by external demands, your brain experiences a severe deficit of autonomy. Humans have a fundamental psychological need for agency, the feeling that we control our own actions.
And by midnight, your brain is starving for agency.
Starving. Staying up late to scroll or watch television is the only immediate, low-effort way your mind can steal back a sense of control. You are saying to the world, you controlled my whole day, but you cannot control my night.
But, as you noted, it is a Pyrrhic victory.
Completely. You are attempting to reclaim your autonomy by actively destroying your biological restoration. And this introduces a critical concept from the text. The danger of drifting.
Drifting. Let's really dig into what that means for the listener's day-to-day experience.
When you fail to orchestrate that gentle landing, when you simply collapse into a state of unconsciousness after a chaotic, retaliatory session of late-night scrolling, you do not wake up the next morning with any degree of intentionality.
You just drift into the next day.
Drifting means moving through your environment without a clear direction, entirely at the mercy of whatever external currents happen to push against you.
Because your mind never safely landed the night before.
Right. It carries all the heavy, unresolved emotional baggage, the elevated cortisol, and the mental clutter of yesterday straight into the new morning.
You wake up instantly on the defensive. You aren't consciously stepping into a new day. You are being aggressively dragged into it by the momentum of the past.
Exactly.
You are waking up already behind enemy lines. So let's play this out. Let's assume we actually implement this. We skip the revenge scrolling. We read a book. We orchestrate a gentle landing. Our brain chemistry settles, and we don't drift.
Sounds lovely.
Right. We wake up with a clean, uncrowded mental slate. What is the very next trap waiting for us? Because looking at the research, it is almost never the massive, catastrophic life crises that ruin our average Tuesday.
Oh, rarely.
It is the microscopic, mundane things that absolutely break us.
This brings us to what we might call the tyranny of the tiny task.
The microscopic crises. I read this specific part of the analysis and felt so deeply personally attacked.
It's incredibly relatable.
It highlights the absurd reality that the heaviest psychological burden in your day is rarely a major project or a life-altering emergency. The thing causing a knot in your stomach is usually just a cluster of 5 tiny, completely trivial, unfinished chores.
It is an email reply to a colleague that you've been avoiding.
It is making a 2-minute phone call to book a dentist appointment. It is logging into a portal to pay a $40 invoice.
Right.
Why do these completely microscopic things have the power to mentally crush us?
We have to look at the underlying psychological trap of task delay, specifically how our brains process uncompleted actions. When a task is objectively small, like scheduling that dentist appointment, our immediate reflex instinct is to categorize it as trivial.
We tell ourselves, I will just do that later. It'll only take 2 minutes so I can fit it in any time.
But later is not a time on the clock.
No, it is not.
Later easily shifts to tomorrow, and tomorrow bleeds into next Thursday. And here is the fascinating, mechanistic psychological trap.
Okay, what is it?
The actual physical time required to execute the task remains permanently fixed at 2 minutes. But the emotional bandwidth required to hold that task in your mind grows exponentially with every single day you delay it.
Oh, wow. So an unwritten email is exactly like a background app running on your smartphone.
That is a perfect analogy.
You can't see the app on your main screen. You aren't actively swiping around in it, but it is quietly, relentlessly eating 15% of your battery life every single hour.
Yes.
By Thursday, your battery is completely dead, your phone is shutting down, and you haven't even done anything productive. You are exhausted entirely by the background processing.
That is a perfect technical metaphor for the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect. Explain how that works.
So in the 1920s, a Russian psychologist named Bluma Zeigarnik was sitting in a bustling cafe in Vienna. She began observing the waiters, who were managing incredibly complex orders from dozens of tables without writing anything down.
That's impressive on its own.
Right. But she noticed something peculiar. The waiters had flawless memories for the details of unpaid orders. They could remember exactly who ordered what, down to the side dishes.
Okay.
But the exact second the bill was paid and the transaction was closed, the waiters completely forgot the order.
Really? It just vanished.
The information vanished from their memory. Zeigarnik theorized and later proved through rigorous studies that the human brain is hardwired to remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks vastly better than completed ones.
So when you decide to delay that 4-minute email, you are creating an open loop.
Exactly. Your brain interprets that open loop as an unresolved tension. It literally utilizes active working memory to keep that task alive, constantly pinging your conscious mind to say, don't forget the email, we still have to do the email.
It is a survival mechanism designed to ensure we finish what we start. But in the modern digital age, it turns our brains into exhausted, constantly pinging servers.
That's exactly what happens.
And there is this highly relatable anecdote that illustrates exactly how warped our perception becomes when we leave these loops open. Someone had a completely basic informational email they needed to send.
It required no complex thought.
Right. But because they avoided it for days, the anxiety surrounding the task compounded. They noted that by day 5, opening the draft felt like they were preparing to write to a king.
Yes.
Why does the brain do that? Why does a simple, yes, I will attend the meeting email suddenly develop this massive, terrifying royal personality just because we waited a week?
Because avoidance is a feedback loop that triggers the amygdala.
The fear center.
Right. When you consciously decide to avoid a task, even a trivial one, your brain notes that avoidance. Subconsciously, the brain's logic is, we are avoiding this, therefore it must be dangerous or threatening. The amygdala does not distinguish between the social threat of a late email and a physical threat in the environment. It just registers pending danger. So it begins a slow drip of cortisol into your system.
As the days pass, the anxiety metastasizes. A task that required zero emotional energy on Monday now requires a massive surge of emotional fortitude on Friday, because you aren't just writing an email anymore.
You are battling your own compounded fear response.
You start obsessing over imagined consequences. Are they furious? I haven't replied. Do I need to invent a complex excuse? What if they think I am incompetent?
And people constantly use the phrase, I just let it slide.
Yes. I was busy on Tuesday, so I just let that invoice slide. It sounds so casual and harmless, but letting something slide is actually a profound trap.
It is entirely a trap. You aren't actually letting it slide off your plate. You are just picking it up and putting it in a backpack that you are forcing yourself to wear all week.
So the absolute core takeaway for you, the listener, regarding these tiny tasks is that inner peace does not come from expanding your capacity to do more things.
We always fall for that illusion. If I can just become a faster worker, I'll finally feel peaceful.
No. Peace comes from ruthlessly closing open loops before they have the chance to follow you around and drain your background battery.
It is about taking that 2-minute task and executing it instantly.
Not because you are trying to be a hyper-productive corporate robot, but as an act of profound self-mercy. You are literally saving your future self from carrying a psychological brick around in a backpack for the next 7 days.
Exactly. Viewing the immediate completion of small tasks, not as a productivity hack, but as essential psychological hygiene, fundamentally changes your relationship to your to-do list.
You are cleaning the mental room.
You are.
Okay, so I book the dentist, I pay the $40 invoice, I send the email to the king, my inbox is at 0, the loops are closed, and theoretically, I have reclaimed my time.
Sounds perfect.
I now have a totally blank, glorious Saturday afternoon sitting on my calendar. But here's the brutal reality that we all slam into. Why am I still staring blankly at the wall on Saturday? If I successfully bought back the time, why do I feel too paralyzed, too numb, to actually use it for anything meaningful?
Because you are operating under the deeply flawed assumption that time is the ultimate metric of freedom.
Is it not?
Here is the illusion we all fall for. We assume free time has inherent value. It doesn't. Time is merely a container. It is an empty vessel.
Okay.
And an empty vessel is completely useless if you lack the currency to fill it. Which brings us to the most vital paradigm shift we can make. Energy, not time, is the true currency of human life.
Energy, not time. That is a massive distinction. We track our hours, we optimize our calendars, we block out free time, but we completely ignore the fuel required to exist inside those hours.
Think about the tragic irony of the modern weekend. You aggressively manage your schedule all week so you can have Saturday completely open. But when Saturday arrives, you are so utterly drained, so physiologically and emotionally depleted from the friction of the week, that your executive function is completely offline.
You have the time to go for a hike, to paint, to play with your kids, or to have a deep conversation with your partner, but you lack the energetic currency to purchase those experiences.
So instead, you spend your hard-won free time lying on a couch, passively consuming algorithmic content, just trying to numb the exhaustion.
We have this toxic cultural equation that non-stop grinding effort equals being a serious adult. It is as if we believe that if we aren't bleeding from the eyeballs with exhaustion by Friday evening, we must not be trying hard enough.
Like we must be failing as an employee or failing as a parent.
Right.
And that toxic equation is exactly why perfectly planned, color-coded schedules almost inevitably fail. We build our schedules based on the rigid mathematics of time.
A spreadsheet tells you there are 24 hours in a day.
You allocate 8 for sleep, 8 for work, 2 for commuting, leaving 6 hours for family, exercise, and hobbies. It looks mathematically flawless on a screen.
But that spreadsheet is a fiction.
It is completely out of sync with human neurobiology. We are biological organisms, not microprocessors. We operate on ultradian rhythms.
We experience severe peaks and valleys in our glucose levels, our dopamine production, and our cognitive endurance.
When you build a life system that assumes your energy is a flat, infinite, unchanging line from 7:00 a.m. to 11:000 p.m., you are engineering a system specifically designed to break you.
Yes, because if you try to operate like a microprocessor and never willingly schedule a pause, your biology will eventually step in and force a pause.
And it will not be a polite, convenient pause.
No, it won't wait for your vacation week. The body forces a shutdown through severe brain fog, a sudden collapse of the immune system, or just wildly disproportionate emotional volatility.
There is this incredibly stark, terrifyingly relatable example of this biological forced shutdown in the research.
Yes, the dinner question. You have pushed yourself to the absolute edge of your energetic limits, and your partner walks into the kitchen and simply asks you the most mundane, common question on earth.
What do you want for dinner?
And how does the depleted brain process that question?
It processes it as an unprovoked act of warfare.
Exactly. Your tired brain completely short circuits. You react with intense irritation or even despair, thinking, how dare you ask me to generate a meal concept? I have negotiated a dozen complex decisions today. I have managed a crisis. I've answered 60 emails, and I have absolutely zero cognitive capacity left to decide between chicken and pasta.
It sounds humorous in retrospect, but in the moment, it is a terrifying indicator of how close we constantly walk to the absolute edge of our energetic cliff.
That intense reaction to what's for dinner is the ultimate textbook symptom of having entirely depleted your energetic currency.
In cognitive psychology, this relates to decision fatigue and the depletion of executive function. The prefrontal cortex, which governs logical reasoning, self-control, and complex decision-making, is highly energy-dependent.
It burns glucose rapidly.
When you wear yourself out through relentless, unbroken effort and constant context switching throughout the day, that specific part of your brain literally runs out of fuel and goes offline.
The biological hardware cannot support the software.
That is why a simple question feels like an attack. You literally lack the neurological resources to process the variables of inventory, preference, and preparation time. Your brain reverts to its primitive, reactive state.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because recognizing that energy is finite isn't just about avoiding a meltdown over dinner. It is about fundamentally rethinking what we do with the peak energy we do possess.
Yes, we have to introduce the concept of reclaiming your golden hours.
Because not all hours on the clock carry the same energetic value, do they?
Absolutely not. An hour is mathematically 60 minutes, but biologically, the hour between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. is a completely different universe than the hour between 3:00 p.m. and 4 p.m.
During your golden hours, which vary from person to person, but often occur in the morning after sleep, your cortisol is at an optimal waking level, your dopamine receptors are refreshed, and your executive function is operating at maximum capacity.
You are sharp, creative, and resilient.
And what do we currently do with those pristine peak performance golden hours? We commit an absolute tragedy.
We really do.
We take the sharpest, most vibrant, most powerful cognitive window of our entire day, and we spend it executing weak, trivial priorities. We sit down with our fresh morning coffee, and we instantly open our email to reply to a dozen mundane requests.
We sit in a useless status update meeting. We argue with a stranger in a social media comment section.
We squander our highest value currency on the lowest value tasks. And then at 7 p.m. week, when we finally put the laptop away and turn toward the things that theoretically give our lives actual meaning, our creative passions, our spouses, our children,
our brain, as the research brilliantly puts it, arrives wearing slippers.
That specific phrase, your brain arrives wearing slippers, is devastating because of its accuracy.
It really is. You have surrendered the absolute best, most capable version of yourself to the trivial demands of strangers. And you offer the exhausted, shuffling, half-asleep remnants of your mind to the people and projects you claim are essential.
Reclaiming your golden hours requires a radical restructuring of priority. It means identifying your peak energetic window, whether you write best, analyze data best, or parent best during that time, and fiercely protecting it from low-level administrative noise.
You must treat that specific energetic window as sacred territory.
But hold on, let me play devil's advocate for the listener who is starting to feel a familiar sense of pressure.
Sure.
If we start obsessing over identifying and optimizing peak energetic windows, aren't we just falling back into the trap of treating ourselves like highly tuned machines?
That's a valid concern.
Aren't we just finding a brand new metric energy management to stress ourselves out over and inevitably fail at? Because realistically, most of us are just surviving on borrowed energy anyway. We are dragging ourselves through the day, fueled entirely by iced coffee, adrenaline, and impending deadlines.
That is an incredibly important pushback, and you are right to highlight the danger. If energy management is co-opted by the optimization culture and turns into just another whip you use to crack over your own back, we have completely failed.
So what's the alternative?
The conceptual shift here is not about becoming a hyper-vigilant energy robot. It is rooted in profound self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
It is about recognizing the biological reality that operating on borrowed energy, stimulating your central nervous system with caffeine and stress hormones, is a short-term survival mechanism designed for evading predators.
It is not a viable long-term strategy for living.
No. You cannot build a meaningful, sustainable existence on a biological loan that you will eventually have to pay back with severe interest in the form of burnout or illness.
Identifying your golden hours isn't about maximizing your corporate production output. It's about honoring your humanity and ensuring you have enough of yourself left to actually participate in your own life.
Well said.
Okay, so let's walk through the reality of trying to implement this. Let's say I identify my golden hours. I know that between 9:00 and 11 a.m., my brain is firing on all cylinders.
Okay.
The immediate logical next step is that I have to build a wall around that time. I have to protect it. But the moment you try to protect your time, the world actively comes for it.
Oh, always.
And the things that manage to breach the wall and steal our golden hours usually aren't dramatic emergencies or aggressive demands. The real threat comes from what we can call polite thieves.
The polite thieves, yes. This is why our defenses often fail.
We construct massive fortresses to protect ourselves from massive, obvious interruptions, but we leave the side door wide open for the polite thieves.
They come armed with the most dangerous phrase in the modern workplace. Do you have 5 minutes?
It's the quick favor. They like, hey, can you just take a quick glance at this deck? Let's just hop on a quick call to a line. It always sounds so harmless, so minimal.
And countering the polite thieves requires us to deeply examine the psychology of boundary setting. Most of us harbor a deeply ingrained aversion to setting boundaries because we interpret them as confrontational, selfish, or cold.
We want to be perceived as collaborative team players, helpful friends, and accommodating partners.
But the harsh mathematical reality is that human bandwidth is a zero-sum game.
Meaning,
Every single time you offer an unnecessary reflexive yes to a polite thief, you are simultaneously issuing a quiet, hidden no to your own peace, your own deep focus, and your own necessary rest.
every yes to them is an automatic no to you.
Precisely. If you succumb to the pressure and say yes to a poorly planned 1-hour brainstorming meeting that lacks an agenda, you are actively saying no to an hour of unbroken deep work.
You are saying no to an hour of reading to your child that evening because that energy will be gone.
You are saying no to an hour of simply staring out the window and allowing your nervous system to regulate. Boundaries are not acts of hostility.
They are protective perimeters.
They are the essential fencing required to keep the livestock of your attention from wandering onto the highway.
It sends a powerful psychological signal to your peer group, and more importantly, to your own ego, that you are important, indispensable, and highly valuable.
We publicly complain to our friends about how exhausted we are, but secretly, subconsciously, we wear that exhaustion as a badge of honor. It is the modern proof of our worth.
I really want to challenge you, the listener, to pause and look directly at this in your own life. Think about the very last time you voluntarily agreed to take on a task, a favor, or a project that you absolutely knew you did not have the physical or mental capacity for.
Ask yourself honestly.
Was your inability to say no truly an act of selfless kindness toward that other person, or was it actually driven by fear?
Was it the quiet, terrifying fear that if you were not constantly in motion, constantly serving, constantly performing and producing, that your value as a human being would instantly evaporate?
Are you using your exhaustion as a heavy protective shield so that you never have to sit alone in a quiet room and figure out who you actually are without your to-do list?
That cuts to the absolute existential dread that fuels our busy work. If you put down the flaming swords, what are you left with?
Just you.
When you fiercely cling to busyness, you are utilizing constant forward motion to avoid complex emotion. Setting a firm boundary, actually looking someone in the eye and saying, no, I don't have the capacity for that, forces the motion to start.
It forces you to confront the stillness.
And for a significant portion of the modern population, living with a chaotic, crowded mind is vastly preferable to the deafening silence they fear they might encounter if they actually cleared the room.
Wow. Okay. That is heavy. But let's say we summon the courage. We decide we want the silence. We stop automatically saying yes. We set the uncomfortable boundaries.
We banish the polite thieves from our golden hours.
Suddenly the frantic motion stops. We have finally forced our lives to slow down. But slowing down comes with its own terrifying revelation.
Because when you finally hit the brakes, you realize exactly how much of your life has simply been vanishing without you noticing.
And that transition introduces the next critical mechanism we must understand: the blur.
When we exist at a hyper-accelerated, optimized pace, time doesn't simply pass normally. It literally blurs, much like the visual distortion you experience moving at high speeds.
It is the tragedy of speed. When life is lived entirely in the fast lane, days don't unfold, they just smear together. Think about your average Tuesday morning.
Breakfast isn't an experience.
It is just background texture while you shove something in your mouth and pack a laptop bag. The walk from your car to the office building isn't a walk.
It is merely a rushed, agitated transition between two stress points.
Even our desperate attempts to rest become infected by speed. We turn relaxation into just another item on the to-do list. Okay, I have exactly 18 minutes to aggressively relax and meditate before my 2:00 p.m. Zoom call. Go.
This is where we must bridge the gap between neurobiology and philosophy. Speed inherently steals detail.
And detail, sensory, emotional, granular detail, is the exact and only location where human life is actually felt and encoded into memory.
You do not experience the reality of your life in broad, abstract concepts. You only experience it in the microscopic sensory details.
Like this specific bitter profile of the coffee hitting your tongue.
The exact temperature of the autumn wind on your neck. The subtle shift in pitch when your partner laughs at a joke.
When you accelerate your consciousness past the speed of presence, your brain physically cannot encode those details. You strip all the texture out of your existence.
This is why you can reach the end of a long, incredibly busy week, look back, and feel a profound sense of amnesia.
The week just vanished. You were physically present in the room for all of it, but cognitively and emotionally, you were a ghost.
It is exactly like driving down the interstate at 120 miles an hour. You look out the side window and the entire world is just a meaningless smear of green and gray.
You can't see the individual leaves on the oak trees. You can't see the architectural details of the farmhouses. The only possible way to stop losing your life to the blur is to physically and mentally decelerate.
But how do we actually execute that in a culture and an economy that ruthlessly demands speed? We can't all move to a cabin in the woods.
This requires the active daily practice of carving out time. And the specific verb carve is absolutely essential here.
It implies significant friction and resistance.
The modern world is a solid, compressed block of demands, algorithms, and urgencies. You have to take a metaphorical chisel and aggressively carve out a hollow space for slowness.
Slowness will never simply materialize. You will never, ever reach the end of your to-do list and magically find an hour of slow time waiting for you.
You have to proactively, aggressively protect a 20-minute walk without a podcast playing in your ears. You have to carve out a meal eaten at a table without a screen illuminating your face.
Because if we don't use the chisel, if we don't carve out that space, the speculation of where we end up is incredibly bleak.
Imagine reaching the final years of your life, looking back, and realizing the whole thing was just a high-speed blur of answering emails, rushing through breakfast, and panicking about deadlines.
If you don't actively fight for the slowness now, you don't get to keep the memories later, because memories require the glue of sensory detail to stick in the brain.
Capturing that detail requires a conscious, intentional downregulation of the nervous system. It requires sending deliberate biological signals to your brain that the emergency is over.
That there is no tiger chasing you, and that it is finally safe to notice the texture of the world again.
So bringing this all together, how do we take this massive conceptual shift, acting as the bouncer to a clean mental room, orchestrating a gentle landing at night, closing the open loops of tiny tasks, fiercely protecting our golden hours from polite thieves, and aggressively carving out slowness? How do we do all of this without turning time management into a brand new, highly stressful religion that we are inevitably going to sin against?
Because I can literally feel the listener tensing up right now.
Thinking, great, I'm already exhausted, and now I have a list of 6 complex psychological protocols I have to execute perfectly just to achieve baseline peace.
And preventing that exact reaction is why our final paradigm shift is the most important of all. We have to fundamentally redefine what success looks like by shifting our focus to building for an ordinary Tuesday.
An ordinary Tuesday.
The ultimate trap of the self-improvement industry is that it demands you transform into a perfect machine with flawless, unbreakable routines. If your attempt to manage your attention just becomes another source of guilt and pressure, you have entirely missed the plot.
Exactly. We constantly build these elaborate, idealistic systems for the fantasy version of ourselves.
The fantasy version of you wakes up at 5:00 a.m. full of energy.
The fantasy version never gets a head cold, never has a child throw up in the hallway at 3 a.m., never gets a flat tire on the way to work, and possesses infinite willpower.
But the fantasy version of you does not exist. Real life, in all its chaotic, messy unpredictability, is the actual test environment.
Precisely. The most successful daily routine is not the aesthetically perfect 10-step protocol that looks impressive when filmed for social media.
The best, most valuable routine is the flexible, resilient one that actually functions on a messy, tired, gray, ordinary Tuesday when it is raining and nothing seems to be going according to plan.
So the goal is to stop aiming for efficiency and start aiming for sustainability. We need to look at our lives more like an ecosystem and less like a factory floor.
Efficiency is a metric designed for industrial machines. It measures maximum output per unit of time, and it assumes the machine has an unlimited supply of electricity.
Sustainability is a biological metric. It measures endurance, health, and the maintenance of equilibrium over the long haul.
You are not a conveyor belt. You are a complex, fragile ecosystem. True success in managing your time is not about figuring out how to cram 3 more tasks into the finite container of your day.
It is about restructuring your days so that you lose less of your true self inside of them.
So what does this all mean?
If we take a step back and distill this entire massive exploration into one guiding thesis, it is this. The ultimate goal of your life is not to build a fuller schedule, but to build a fuller life.
A calendar that is packed to the absolute brim with hyper-efficient productivity blocks leaves absolutely no oxygen for the human being to breathe.
A fuller life explicitly requires empty space. It requires the breathing room to actually feel, process, and inhabit the moments you are living through.
It is the vital transition from living in a state of being constantly crowded to living in a state of being deeply conscious.
And as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to speak directly to you, the listener, one last time. Please do not take this conversation and turn it into a heavy burden.
You do not need to wake up tomorrow and implement every single concept we just discussed. A total life overhaul is just another form of exhaustion. Do not do that to yourself.
Just pick one tiny microscopic shift. That is all it takes. Maybe tonight, instead of revenge scrolling, you choose to orchestrate a gentler landing.
You put the phone in another room 30 minutes earlier, and you let your mind actually descend before you sleep.
Or maybe tomorrow morning, you just close one tiny open loop. You finally send that 4-minute email you've been dreading, saving your battery life for the rest of the week.
Or maybe you just carve out 10 minutes to reclaim a single golden hour. Just one small, intentional shift in how you protect your attention can radically alter the trajectory of your entire week.
And as you move forward and consider which small shift to make, I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative question to turn over in your mind.
Throughout our lives, we have passively accepted the narrative that modern digital conveniences were designed to save us time. But what if we completely invoke that assumption?
If you look at the economics of the tech industry, these platforms are not monetizing your time. They are monetizing your attention.
If the entire architecture of the digital world, every notification, every infinite scroll, every frictionless convenience was actually designed from the ground up to capture and extract your attention rather than free your time, how does that fundamentally change your relationship with the very next convenience app you were tempted to download?
When you click install, are you truly buying back your time, or are you just voluntarily selling them your peace?
A profound, unsettling question to ponder the next time your phone pings.
Because at the end of the day, you are the only one standing at the door. You have to decide what gets past the velvet rope. You don't want to wake up a year from now, look around your own mind, and realize it is just a ruined room after a children's birthday party, loud, sticky, and completely exhausted.
You have the power to clean the room.
You have the power to protect your energy. You have the power to reclaim your peace. Talk to you next time. I mean, you know when you buy a brand new smartphone, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing quite like that feeling.
Right. You take it out of that perfectly designed little box and you peel off that plastic film.
That very satisfying peeling sound.
Exactly, that sound. And you turn it on for the very first time. And there's just this incredible expectation of, I don't know, limitless potential.
Yeah, the battery icon is a solid, bright green, 100%.
Yes, 100%. And the interface is unbelievably snappy. You tap an app, and it just explodes onto the screen instantly.
No lag at all.
Right, zero lag.
Yeah.
You swipe through your home pages, and it glides like it's on ice. It is a completely clean slate.
But then a year goes by.
Or maybe 2 years, yeah. And you are sitting at your desk doing the exact same things you've always done.
Just normal stuff, sending a few messages.
Right, checking the weather, maybe reading an article. But suddenly you look up and the battery indicator's blinking red, and it's barely noon.
Which is the worst feeling.
It is.
Yeah.
And you're just staring at the screen bewildered, thinking, like, what happened? I haven't even done anything heavily intensive today.
You're not rendering a movie or anything.
Exactly. I haven't watched an HD movie. I haven't played a graphics-heavy game. Why is this thing dying?
Well, and if you were to take that phone to a technician, the answer they give you is almost always invisible to the naked eye.
Right.
It's never the 1 or 2 apps you are actively engaging with at that exact moment. It is the background processes. It's the sheer accumulation of invisible weight.
The background apps. The dozen things you completely forgot were even open, just pushed to the back of the phone's memory.
Precisely. You've got a navigation app silently pinging satellites to check your location every 3 minutes.
Oh, man, yeah.
You've got a social media app constantly refreshing its feed in the dark, just pulling down data just in case you decide to open it.
Just in case. Like, it's doing you a favor.
Right. You have software updates, trying to negotiate a connection. All of these hidden, silent processes are just quietly, relentlessly draining the life out of the device's lithium-ion battery.
Before you even make a single actual phone call.
Exactly.
And, as I was digging through our source material for today, it struck me with such clarity that when we step into the world of modern productivity and mental energy and daily focus, we are essentially walking around like year-old smartphones.
That is such a good way to put it.
We are looking at a daily landscape that is, quite honestly, exhausting us before we even begin.
It is a remarkably accurate parallel because what you were describing with that smartphone is a systemic energy leak.
Right.
It's an infrastructure problem, not a user error problem. And it is something that almost every single person listening to us right now is actively experiencing in their own cognitive architecture.
Which is wild to think about.
It really is. The modern human brain is currently operating in an environment it was never, ever evolutionarily designed to handle. It is subjected to this constant low-level drain of cognitive resources.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because our mission today for this deep dive is to explore a very specific, very modern, and incredibly frustrating paradox.
The big paradox.
Right. If you look around, we have more convenient tools at our disposal than any generation in human history.
Unquestionably.
I mean, we have algorithms that predict what we want to type before we type it.
We have instant communication across the globe.
We have groceries delivered to our door with literally a thumbprint. By all traditional metrics, we should be living in an era of unprecedented leisure.
We should be lounging around all day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yet we feel less calm, we feel significantly more rushed, and we feel far more depleted than ever before.
Well,
why?
It's the ultimate question.
To answer that, we are looking at a truly fascinating source today. We've got a transcript from what is officially a C2 advanced English learning lesson.
Which is just brilliant in its construction.
It really is.
Because it functions entirely as a Trojan horse. If you look at it purely on the surface level, it is a curriculum designed to teach high-level idiomatic English vocabulary to non-native speakers.
Right, just vocabulary.
But the underlying narrative they use to teach those words doubles as an incredibly profound, neurologically sound psychological guide to managing time.
Yeah, protecting your internal energy reserves.
Exactly. And navigating the invisible, highly engineered traps of modern life. It doesn't just tell us we are tired. It provides the precise mechanical language to identify exactly why you, the listener, might be feeling so deeply overwhelmed by a to-do list that on paper doesn't actually look that intimidating.
And having that language, I think, being able to put a name to that invisible drain is the first critical step to stopping it.
100%.
So let's get right into the baseline truth that this source establishes.
Yeah.
Because it starts with a reality check that feels, honestly, a bit counterintuitive when we talk about productivity.
Yeah, it challenges the normal advice.
It suggests that our days do not actually begin when the alarm goes off.
Which is wild.
Right. It says our days begin the night before. And it introduces this concept of mental noise that is generated entirely by small, unfinished tasks.
The shift in perspective here is just monumental.
Yeah.
I mean, for decades, the entire productivity industry, from the expensive seminars to the best-selling books, has sold us almost exclusively on the concept of time management.
Oh, yeah. Buying planners, color-coding calendars.
Exactly. We are taught to try to aggressively squeeze 61 minutes of output out of a 60-minute hour.
Which is exhausting just to think about.
It is. But the source correctly identifies a massive flaw in that model, which is that time is an entirely irrelevant metric if your energy is depleted.
Oh, that's so true.
Right. Let's say you perfectly block out 3 free hours on your calendar on a Tuesday afternoon.
A beautiful open block of time.
Yes. But if your brain is completely fried from the mental noise of 50 unfinished micro tasks lingering from Monday, those 3 hours are effectively useless to you.
You're just going to sit there.
You will sit there staring at the screen. The convenience of modern tools, the instant messaging platforms, the constantly refreshing inboxes, the one-click ordering has not given us calmness.
Not at all.
Instead, it has exponentially increased the sheer volume of that mental noise.
So if our brain has a finite amount of energy, and we'll get into the exact mechanics of that in a moment, where are we accidentally spending it before we even get to work?
That's the key question.
Because is convenience actually just a trap in disguise? Going back to that smartphone analogy for a second.
Yeah, let's look at that.
Are these unfinished tasks essentially those hidden apps running in the background of your brain?
I think they are exactly that.
Like, let's say you lie in bed at 11 p.m. The lights are off. Your eyes are closed.
You're supposed to be resting.
Right. But part of your brain is actively processing an email you drafted to your boss, but decided not to send until morning.
Just holding on to it.
Yes. Another distinct part of your brain is running a loop, remembering that you need to buy paper towels because you used the last roll after dinner.
Oh, I do that all the time.
We all do. Another part is experiencing a low-level ambient anxiety about a Slack message from a colleague that you read but forgot to reply to.
The dreaded read receipt.
Exactly. Your body is resting, but your brain is pinging servers.
Yeah.
It's quietly draining your battery to zero before the sun even comes up.
And that drain has an actual biological name.
Right. Really?
Yeah, it's rooted in something called the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect.
Right, named after the psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, who first studied it in the 1920s.
Okay. What does she find?
Well, she noticed that waiters in a restaurant could remember incredibly complex, multi-person orders flawlessly right up until the moment the food was delivered and paid for.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the second the transaction was complete, the memory of the order vanished completely.
Just wiped from the RAM.
Exactly. And from this, she discovered a fundamental principle of human cognition, which is that our brains are hardwired to remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks significantly better than completed ones?
You know, that makes total sense from an evolutionary standpoint, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, if you are a hunter-gatherer, you really need to remember that you left a fire smoldering near the camp, or that you tracked an animal halfway to the river but haven't secured it yet.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, forgetting an open loop in the Paleolithic era could literally mean starvation or death.
Precisely. It is a brilliant survival mechanism. Your brain creates a state of cognitive tension, like a psychological itch, designed to keep that unfinished task at the forefront of your awareness so you don't drop the ball on your survival.
So it's trying to help us.
It is. The problem is that your brain's ancient threat detection system cannot distinguish between the life or death importance of a smoldering fire and the relative insignificance of an unread Slack message.
To the brain, a threat is a threat.
Right. An open loop is an open loop. It requires the exact same mechanism to keep it active. So the cognitive load of holding 50 modern open loops, emails, texts, subscription renewals, meeting preps, requires immense metabolic energy.
It's like juggling fire in the dark.
Yes. Your brain is desperately juggling all these balls. So you wake up, your alarm goes off at 6:30 a.m., and you already feel behind.
You haven't done a single physical thing yet.
But cognitively, you have been running a marathon all night long.
Man, I want you, the listener, to really sit with that for a minute. Think about your own morning today. Think about what it actually feels like to live with that pre-drained battery.
It's exhausting.
Because I think this might be the most validating, deeply relieving thing you hear all week. When you are suffering from this, it feels like you're trying to walk through waist-deep water.
That's a great description.
You sit down at your desk with your coffee, you look at a perfectly reasonable standard list of tasks for the day, and you feel an actual physical weight pressing down on your chest.
You open a blank document.
You stare at the blinking cursor.
And your brain just outputs pure static.
Yes, pure static. And society, or our own inner critic, often labels that feeling as laziness.
Which is so unfair.
We tell ourselves, come on, just focus. Why can't you just do this? It's not that hard.
Mm-hmm.
But what this source and the underlying psychology are telling us is that it is fundamentally not laziness.
No, it's not.
It is a profound energy deficit.
It is a biological and neurological deficit. Let's look at the mechanics of what is actually happening under the hood.
Okay, let's do it.
Right behind your forehead is your prefrontal cortex. It is the evolutionary newest part of the brain, and you can think of it as the CEO of your mind.
The CEO. Okay.
It is responsible for complex planning, moderating your social behavior, expressing your personality, and making complex decisions.
All the big stuff.
Exactly. But just like a real CEO, it is incredibly expensive to keep on the payroll.
Oh, I like that.
It is highly metabolically demanding. It burns through resources, specifically glucose, at an astonishing rate whenever it has to weigh variables or suppress impulses.
So it's a gas guzzler.
Huge gas guzzler. When you spend all night and all morning allowing the Zeigarnik effect to hold open dozens of microloops, you are essentially starving the prefrontal cortex of the glucose it needs to function.
Wow.
And this sets the stage perfectly for the specific, highly engineered traps our source outlines next. Because once we accept the reality that we are starting the day with a compromised, finite pool of energy, we can start to see the active daily habits that are rapidly draining whatever precious fuel is left in the tank.
Which brings us to the first massive trap the source identifies. We've established that the background noise is the passive drain. Now let's look at the active ways we hemorrhage our energy every single morning without even realizing it.
The quiet killer.
Yes. The source introduces a term for this, decision fatigue. And it accurately labels it the quiet killer of a productive afternoon.
The scenario they lay out to illustrate this is painfully relatable.
It really is.
Yeah.
So you wake up, you step into your closet and you have to decide what to wear.
Right.
You walk to the kitchen and you have to decide what to eat for breakfast. You open your phone while the coffee is brewing, and you decide which of the 15 overnight emails you should answer first.
Just decision after decision.
You get in your car, and you have to actively decide which route to take to avoid the morning traffic.
And this is where the biological reality of that prefrontal cortex comes back into play. Every single one of those choices, no matter how trivial they seem to you consciously, requires identical cognitive processing.
Wait, really? Identical?
Yes. The brain has to evaluate options, predict outcomes, and select a path forward. The concept of decision fatigue reveals that our ability to make good decisions is not a character trait that you either have or you don't.
It's not just willpower.
No, it is a limited resource. It functions exactly like a physical muscle. Every single time you flex it, it sustains micro tears. It gets a little bit more tired.
That makes so much sense.
And the brain does not naturally weigh the importance of a decision when burning that energy. Choosing between frosted flakes and oatmeal burns the same base level of executive function as choosing between two different marketing strategies.
That is terrifying.
So by the time you reach 3 p.m., and you are faced with a truly critical decision like approving a massive department budget, or solving a complex structural problem at work, or even just navigating a highly delicate, emotionally charged conversation with your partner.
Which is empty.
Your decision-making muscle is effectively paralyzed.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me.
Yeah.
I like to picture this daily executive function capacity as a physical allowance of heavy gold coins.
Okay, I love a good analogy.
Let's say you, the listener, wake up fully rested with exactly 100 gold coins in your pocket.
Nice round number.
Right. That is your total cognitive energy for the day. That's all you get. You spend 5 coins standing in your closet actively deciding whether the blue shirt or the striped shirt looks better with those pants.
5 down.
You spend 10 coins debating whether you have time to make eggs or if you should just grab a granola bar as you run out the door.
Now you're at 85.
You sit on the train and spend 35 coins sorting through your inbox, making rapid-fire decisions about what's urgent, what can wait, and what to delete.
Wow, yeah.
Before you have even sat down at your desk to start your actual job, you've spent half your daily allowance. You only have 50 coins left.
It goes so fast.
When 3 p.m. rolls around and your boss pulls you into a meeting asking for a strategic pivot on a major client project, you reach into your pocket and you are staring at 0 coins. You're bankrupt.
Completely broke.
And the result of that bankruptcy, according to the source, is that we default into one of 2 states. We either make incredibly poor, impulsive choices just to get the decision over with.
Just picking anything to make it stop.
Exactly. Or we fall into what they call analysis paralysis. You just freeze. You avoid making any choice at all because the brain literally refuses to process the variables anymore.
And to illustrate a defense against this, the source points to a behavioral pattern common among highly successful tech founders, specifically mentioning figures like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg.
The famous uniforms.
Exactly, how they famously wore the exact same outfit every single day. The black turtleneck, the gray t-shirt.
Right.
For a long time, pop culture and the media framed that behavior as a quirky fashion statement, or maybe a rigid branding exercise to make themselves recognizable.
Like a cartoon character.
Right, but as the source clarifies, it was not about fashion at all. It was a highly calculated, biologically driven strategy. They were intentionally eliminating one recurring, daily, low-stakes decision in order to hoard their mental energy.
Hoarding their gold coins.
Hoarding the coins for high-stakes, multi-million-dollar problem-solving later in the day.
Wait, let me just state the obvious skepticism here.
Go for it.
If the solution to decision fatigue is wearing a gray uniform and eating plain oatmeal every single day, haven't we just made life incredibly bleak?
I can see how it sounds that way.
I mean, are we supposed to strip all the spontaneity, the variety, and the joy out of our daily routines just to save a few cognitive coins for our corporate employers? Where is the humanity in living like a programmed robot?
That is the natural pushback, for sure. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it changes the framing entirely.
How so?
The goal of automating decisions is absolutely not to strip your life of joy or turn you into a joyless automaton. The goal is strategic allocation.
Strategic allocation, okay.
It is about recognizing that while not all decisions are created equal in terms of their impact on your life, they all cost the exact same physiological currency.
Right, the oatmeal versus the marketing strategy.
Exactly. Automating the small, repetitive, low-impact things like what to wear or what to eat for breakfast doesn't make your life boring. It creates an impenetrable, protective fortress around your best thinking.
Oh, I see.
It ensures that your creativity, your humor, your deep analytical skills, and your emotional patience are fully funded and immediately available for the things that actually matter.
So it's not just about work.
Not at all. You aren't saving those coins just for your boss. You are saving them so that when you get home at 6 p.m., you actually have the cognitive patience to sit on the floor and play with your kids, rather than snapping at them because your prefrontal cortex is completely depleted.
Oh, wow. That really hits home.
You are funding your priorities by defunding the trivialities.
Funding your priorities by defunding the trivialities. I absolutely love that. Because if you don't protect those coins, human nature dictates exactly what happens next.
It does.
Once our decision-making muscle is fatigued and we are operating on an empty pocket, we instinctively gravitate toward whatever is easiest. We default to the path of absolute least resistance just to feel like we are surviving the day.
Just trying to get to the finish line.
Right.
Right.
And this leads us directly into the next massive trap the source highlights. The critical, often misunderstood distinction between being busy and being effective.
This is perhaps the most insidious, culturally reinforced trap of modern knowledge work.
It really is everywhere.
The source poses a brilliant scenario to define this trap, which is answering 50 small emails.
The ultimate trap.
Think about the physiological experience of sitting at your desk and rapid-fire replying to 50 short emails. You feel incredibly busy.
Your fingers are flying across the keyboard.
The unread count on your screen is rapidly dropping. Notifications are pinging, giving you a sense of rhythm.
You feel highly active. You feel like a productive member of society.
But the source forces us to ask a deeply uncomfortable question. If none of those 50 actions actually contributed to your primary overarching goal for the week,
If they didn't move the needle on the big project you were hired to do.
exactly, were you truly effective? Or were you just in motion?
The source uses a metaphor here that I think we have all felt in our bones at some point in our careers.
Oh,
Being a hamster on a wheel.
a perfect image for this.
Think about the mechanics of a hamster wheel. You are running as fast as you physically can. Your heart is pounding. You're expending a massive amount of metabolic energy. The wheel is spinning wildly.
So much effort.
But when you finally step off that wheel at 5 p.m., you look around and realize, with a sinking feeling, that you are in the exact same spatial location you were at 9 a.m.
You haven't traveled anywhere.
You haven't moved an inch. And the psychological result of this, as the source defines it, is the feeling of being spread too thin. You are giving 5% of your attention to 20 different tiny things.
Exactly. And the psychological toll of being perpetually spread too thin is immense. When you only ever engage in rotational motion, You never experience the deep neurological satisfaction of actual completion.
You never get that win.
You never get the profound reward of moving a major, difficult milestone across the finish line. Being effective, as opposed to merely being busy, requires that your actions generate actual momentum toward a specific, predefined destination.
It requires forward motion.
Yes. The tragedy of the hamster wheel is that it burns the exact same amount of energy as forward motion, but it yields zero progress.
I have to confess, I fall for this trap all the time.
I think everyone does.
If I have a really hard, complex, ambiguous task sitting on my desk, let's say writing a huge strategic proposal that requires deep thought, I will actively avoid it by suddenly deciding that it is absolutely critical that I organize my digital file folders right this second.
Suddenly, file organization is the most important thing in the world.
Oh, absolutely, life or death. And when you sit down to answer those 50 emails or organize those folders, you feel an immediate, almost intoxicating rush of satisfaction, don't you? It really feels good in the moment.
It does feel good.
It reminds me of eating a giant bag of highly processed junk food for dinner.
Okay, another great analogy.
You open up a bag of potato chips, and while you are actively eating them, the salt, the fat, and the crunch feel fantastic. Your brain's reward centers are lighting up like a pinball machine.
Oh, totally.
But an hour later, the salt high fades. You feel lethargic, you feel hollow, and fundamentally, your body is still starving because you gave it zero actual nutrients.
You just tricked it.
Yes. Answering 50 trivial emails while ignoring your main project is the professional equivalent of eating a family-sized bag of potato chips for dinner.
That analogy is scientifically spot on because the mechanism driving both of those scenarios is exactly the same. Dopamine.
Dopamine. The usual suspect.
Always. We often casually refer to dopamine as a reward chemical, but neurobiologically, it is actually a neuromodulator of anticipation and motivation.
Anticipation. Interesting.
It is the chemical that drives you to seek out rewards. When you tick a small, easy item off a to-do list, or when you hit send on a short email and hear that little whoosh sound, your brain releases a microdose of dopamine.
That whoosh sound is so satisfying.
It is engineered to be. It feels good. It reinforces the behavior.
Yeah.
The modern inbox is essentially designed using the exact same variable ratio reinforcement schedule as a Las Vegas slot machine.
Wow. A slot machine.
You pull the lever, you refresh the inbox, and you don't know if you're going to get a jackpot, like an exciting email, or nothing. This uncertainty spikes dopamine even higher.
So the hamster wheel isn't just a metaphor for wasting time. It is literally a neurochemical dopamine lump.
Yes. We biologically crave that immediate, low-effort hit of neurotransmitters. The problem is that true effectiveness, the kind of deep, meaningful work that actually moves the needle on your career, your art, or your personal goals, almost always requires delayed gratification.
Which is hard.
Very hard. It requires you to sit in the profound, agonizing discomfort of ignoring the easy, dopamine-rich, small tasks in order to grapple with a difficult, complex problem that will not yield any neurochemical reward until it is finally finished days, weeks, or even months later.
So you have to willingly starve yourself of the cheap dopamine to earn the deep satisfaction of real achievement.
Exactly. So the crucial exercise here for you listening is to radically self-reflect. Where is your personal hamster wheel?
Oh, that's a good question.
What are the specific low-value tasks you instinctively run toward when you want to feel the dopamine hit of being busy, but secretly want to avoid the hard work of being effective?
Man, that is a tough mirror check kind of question to answer, honestly. I mean, my file folders are staring right at me.
We all have our folders.
But if the hamster wheel is the problem, if the rotational motion is killing our progress, we need a mechanical way to get off the wheel and actually move forward on solid ground.
We need a solution.
And that transitions us perfectly into the specific mechanical solution the source provides. The text talks about the absolute necessity of gaining traction.
Traction, right.
They define traction as making real, solid, measurable progress after a frustrating period of little to no progress. It's when the tires finally grip the asphalt instead of just spinning in the mud.
Getting out of the rut.
Exactly. But the source emphasizes a major structural roadblock to traction, which is that you cannot gain traction if you are constantly switching gears.
In cognitive psychology, what the source is referring to is known as the catastrophic cost of context switching.
Context switching.
Yes. Context switching is the absolute enemy of traction. Here is how the mechanism works. Let's say you are deeply focused on a complex project. Your brain has loaded all the necessary variables, the history of the project, and your immediate goals into your working memory.
Like your brain's RAM.
Exactly like computer RAM. Then you hear a ping, and you shift your focus to read a Slack message about a completely unrelated issue.
Just for a second, right? Just see what it is.
Exactly, just for a second. But neurobiologically, there is no such thing as just a second.
Really?
When you shift your focus, your brain incurs what is called a switching penalty. Because you cannot hold two highly complex, unrelated cognitive schemas in your working memory at the same time, your brain essentially has to dump the RAM of the complex project, load the context of the Slack message, process the message, dump that context, and then slowly rebuild the highly fragile cognitive architecture of the original project.
That sounds incredibly inefficient.
It is. Researchers call this attentional residue. Part of your brain is still stuck thinking about the message even after you return to the project.
So you're not even fully back.
Right. If you do this every 5 minutes throughout the day, you are essentially trying to drive a car on the highway by slamming on the gas, accelerating to 60, and then instantly slamming on the brakes to a dead stop over and over again.
You burn through your metabolic fuel at an astronomical rate.
Your engine overheats, and you barely move an inch down the road.
Which brings us to the source's proposed solution to this mechanical failure: task batching.
A great strategy.
The example the source gives is incredibly practical and directly addresses this switching penalty. Instead of leaving your email client open all day on a second monitor, checking it every 5 minutes like a nervous hack, you batch the process.
You group it together.
Right. You set aside 2 specific, dedicated 20-minute blocks in your day, maybe one at 9 a.m. and one at 4 p.m. During those specific blocks, you adopt a persona. You are the communications manager.
I like that framing.
Your only job is to aggressively blast through messages, clear the inbox, and respond. And then, crucially, when the 20 minutes are up, you close the application completely.
Hard stop.
You shut down that mental tab, and you become the project manager or the creative thinker for the next 2 solid hours with 0 interruptions.
It is a remarkably elegant solution because it directly mitigates the neurocognitive cost of RAM dumping that we just discussed.
It stops the start and stop driving.
Exactly. It is about executive function compartmentalization. Task batching allows you to be fully 100% present in one singular role at a time, rather than attempting to be 20% present in 5 roles simultaneously.
And doing all of them badly.
Because as the math of partial presence implies, trying to be 20% present in 5 areas is a guaranteed recipe for failing at all 5.
I love this concept so much because I compare it to changing costumes in a theatrical play.
Costumes. Okay, tell me more.
I have different roles in your life and your work. You are a communicator, a creator, an administrator, maybe a parent. But you wouldn't wear a tall, floppy white chef's hat while trying to play a highly competitive game of tennis, right?
That would be a disaster.
It would. It would fall over your eyes. It would completely throw off your center of gravity. It's just fundamentally the wrong gear for the environment.
Early.
When you leave your email notifications dinging while you were trying to write a complex strategy document, you are trying to play tennis in a chef's hat. You are mixing the costumes.
That is a brilliant visual.
But let me state the fear that every single listener is feeling right now.
The pushback.
Is this actually realistic in today's hyper-connected, always-on corporate culture? Can you really just turn off your communications manager role for 2 hours? What if your boss needs something immediately? What if a client is angry? What if there is a massive fire drill emergency?
This raises what is undeniably the most important question regarding modern productivity, and it is the #1 psychological objection to task batching: the paralyzing fear of the hypothetical emergency.
It's a real fear, though.
It feels very real, but if we are going to gain traction, we have to look objectively at the reality of boundary setting. First, human beings consistently and drastically overestimate what constitutes an actual emergency.
Everything feels urgent.
Most of the things that arrive in our inbox labeled urgent are merely manufactured urgency. It is someone else's lack of planning or anxiety projecting itself onto your day.
Oh, that is so true. Someone else's lack of planning.
Second, true traction requires the professional courage to set and enforce boundaries. This is about conditioning your environment.
Conditioning it.
If you train your team that you will consistently reply to their messages within 30 seconds, they will subconsciously begin to treat you like a human search engine.
Just firing off questions before even thinking.
They will interrupt you with questions they could have easily answered themselves. Conversely, if you clearly and politely communicate your boundaries, like saying, I process my messages at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. to ensure I have time for deep work. If the building is literally on fire, please call my cell phone. People will adapt surprisingly fast.
So you have to train them.
You do. Being partially present all day out of the fear of missing a hypothetical emergency guarantees that your most important career-defining goals are starved of your undivided attention. You have to be willing to risk the minor, temporary inconvenience of a delayed reply to achieve the major, lasting victory of deep, meaningful work.
Okay, so let's say the listener's brave. They buy in, they close the email tab, they take off the chef's hat, they put on their creative thinker costume.
They're ready to go.
They sit down at the keyboard, fully intent on doing the deep work. Even then, even with the absolute best intentions in a closed inbox, there's a sneaky, universally recognized, highly engineered trap waiting to completely derail their traction.
Oh, the labyrinth.
And the source perfectly captures this. It is the digital labyrinth, the profound danger of going down a rabbit hole.
Yes. The source provides an example of this trap that is almost uncomfortably accurate for anyone who works on a computer.
I felt personally attacked by this part.
You start your focused work. You are writing your report. You realize you need to verify one tiny, highly specific piece of historical or statistical information for the project.
Just a quick search.
So you open a fresh browser tab to look it up.
And 45 minutes later, you are watching a high-definition YouTube documentary about bioluminescent deep-sea creatures.
Naturally.
You have 17 different Wikipedia tabs open. You are deeply engrossed in reading about the structural engineering of a Russian submarine invented in 1904.
It happens so fast.
And absolutely none of this has anything to do with the original task you sat down to complete. It is a hilariously relatable phenomenon, but it is also deeply destructive to our momentum.
And we need to deeply analyze why this specific trap is so dangerous, because it operates differently than the dopamine hit of the email inbox.
It does. How so?
The rabbit hole is dangerous because it wears the disguise of genuine productivity. When you are watching that deep sea documentary or reading about the submarine, you are actively learning.
Your brain is absorbing novel information.
Right. Evolutionary psychologists suggest we are infovores. Our brains are hardwired to seek out information because, historically, gathering information increased our chances of survival.
So we are built to be curious.
Because of this, the brain rewards you for learning. So when you fall down a rabbit hole, you do not feel the immediate, sharp pang of guilt that you would if you were just mindlessly scrolling through a social media feed or playing a video game.
Feel like you're doing something good.
But as the source brilliantly defines it, it is actually a very sneaky, highly sophisticated form of procrastination.
Sneaky procrastination.
It is exploration without a purpose. It is a massive diversion of your vital, finite cognitive energy away from the hard work of creation, funneling it instead into the passive, comfortable state of consumption.
So how does this translate into our day-to-day physical lives?
Yeah.
I look at it exactly like going to a massive super grocery store with one very specific mission. You need to buy a gallon of milk. That is your project. You walk through the automatic sliding doors, but somehow you take a wrong turn past the produce, and you end up in the hardware and home goods aisle.
Way off track.
And suddenly you are standing there, deeply comparing the torque specifications and battery life of 3 different cordless power drills.
Analyzing the data?
You are actively analyzing data. You are fully engaged in the shopping experience. You feel like a productive consumer, but you are in the completely wrong aisle and you forgot the milk.
You failed the mission.
You're still shopping, but you aren't doing the thing you actually came to do.
That is a fantastic way to visualize the cognitive disconnect. You are expending energy, but you have lost the thread of your primary intention.
So how do we fix it?
The source offers a very pragmatic structural solution to this, which builds beautifully on the earlier concept of boundary setting. But instead of setting boundaries with your colleagues, you are setting boundaries with your own brain.
Boundaries with yourself.
They suggest pairing a clear spoken intention with a physical constraint, which is a timer.
A timer. Okay.
Before you open that browser tab, you say out loud, I am going to research this specific data point about the 2023 market share for exactly 15 minutes.
You speak it out loud.
You set the timer on your phone or your watch, and when that alarm goes off, a hard, non-negotiable boundary is drawn. You must stop researching, take whatever imperfect information you have gathered, and force yourself to switch from the passive, comfortable mode of consuming information back into the active, difficult mode of creating your project.
It's essentially putting guardrails on your own intellect,
Guardrails, exactly.
which sounds almost paradoxical, doesn't it? We are culturally conditioned to celebrate curiosity. We are told to follow our passions and learn everything we can.
Never stop learning.
Right. But in the highly specific context of getting things done, unchecked curiosity is just distraction with a really good PR team.
That's a great way to put it. Distraction with a PR team.
You have to parent your own brain. You have to say, yes, I agree. The bioluminescent deep-sea creatures are incredibly cool, but recess is over. It is time to go back to math class.
Exactly. It is absolutely vital for the listener's success to recognize a fundamental truth about the modern era. In the information age, the limiting factor to your success is never going to be access to data.
Right. It's everywhere.
You have the sum total of human knowledge in your pocket. The limiting factor is the discipline to stop acquiring data and start applying it.
Stop acquiring and start applying. This brings us to a really fascinating pivot in our deep dive today. Having explored all these underlying concepts, from the biological toll of the background apps to the dopamine loops of the hamster wheel and the evolutionary trap of the deep-sea rabbit holes, we now need to look at how the source material explicitly defines the language we use to describe these experiences.
Because remember the origin of our text today.
Right. This source is ultimately a masterclass in C2 Advanced English. It is cementing our understanding by locking these complex psychological concepts to highly specific descriptive phrases.
And there is immense psychological power in having the precise vocabulary for the cognitive friction we experience.
Oh, so?
In linguistics and psychology, there is a loose concept related to the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which suggests that the structure of a language affects its speaker's worldview or cognition.
The words shape the thought.
Exactly. More practically, in cognitive behavioral therapy, there is a practice known as affect labeling. Brain imaging studies show that when you put a specific emotional or cognitive state into words, you actually decrease the response of the amygdala.
The amygdala, that's the brain's alarm system.
Yes, the panic center. And by putting it into words, you increase the activity in the prefrontal cortex, the CEO. By naming the problem, you move it from an emotional threat to a solvable puzzle.
That is so powerful.
So let's look at the specific definitions the text highlights. First, decision fatigue.
Okay.
The text defines it not merely as being physically tired at the end of the day, but as the specific mental and emotional exhaustion resulting from making too many choices, culminating in the inability to make even the simplest choice, like what to have for dinner.
Right, that is the exact sensation of reaching into your pocket and finding 0 gold coins.
Exactly.
Next on their list is spread too thin. The source anchors this with the highly relatable example of a woman who is volunteering at a charity, working 2 different jobs, and trying to study for a degree simultaneously.
She is trying to do everything.
She is giving a microscopic sliver of herself to a dozen different areas, rendering her fundamentally unable to give enough time, energy, or meaningful attention to any one of them.
Then we have the necessary antidote, which is gain traction.
Gain traction.
This is the direct opposite of spinning on the hamster wheel. It means a slow, difficult project is finally making real, measurable progress. The tires are finally gripping the solid road instead of just spinning wildly in the mud of busy work.
Which leads directly to the mechanical strategy for achieving that traction, task batching.
Right.
The source defines this as the productivity method of grouping similar tasks together. Like doing all your emails in one concentrated block in the morning so you aren't constantly distracted by them all day. It's the act of consciously wearing one costume at a time.
And finally, go down a rabbit hole.
My favorite.
Getting drawn into a complex, fascinating, time-consuming topic that leads you incredibly far away from your original intention.
The submarine.
The source's example is looking up the date of one specific historical battle and inadvertently spending an hour reading about the geopolitical causes of the entire war.
You know, I noticed something really striking about all these specific terms as we were going through them, and I'd love your take on it.
What did you notice?
They are all highly physical, almost spatial metaphors. Think about the imagery. Fatigue is a heavy physical feeling in the muscles.
Okay, yes.
Spread is a spatial action, like physically stretching butter over far too much bread. Traction is the literal physical friction of rubber gripping asphalt. Batching is like physically gathering scattered objects into your arms to carry them, and a hole is the literal spatial void in the ground that you physically fall into.
That is a very astute observation.
Let me ask you, as an expert, Does giving a tangible, physical, spatial name to these completely abstract, invisible cognitive feelings actually make them easier for our brains to defeat?
Without a doubt, human beings evolved in a highly physical, spatial world. Our brains are incredibly adept at navigating physical landscapes, avoiding physical holes, and understanding physical friction.
We know how to walk around a hole.
Exactly. We are much less adept at navigating abstract concepts like attentional residue or dopamine loops.
Those are too invisible.
By mapping these complex neurobiological states onto physical metaphors, we hijack the brain's spatial reasoning centers to solve cognitive problems. This goes back to the concept of affect labeling, often summarized by the phrase, name it to tame it.
Name it to tame it.
When you feel a vague, ambient sense of overwhelm, it's like being lost in a thick fog. You cannot fight a fog, you can only panic inside it.
Right.
But when you are staring blindly at your computer screen, feeling that weight on your chest, and you can specifically, consciously articulate to yourself, I am currently experiencing analysis paralysis because I am suffering from decision fatigue.
You step out of the fog.
You have just stepped outside of the emotion. You have put a precise physical label on the trap. And naming the trap is the very first mandatory step to escaping it. Because once you know you have fallen down a rabbit hole, you can stop digging and you can start looking for a ladder.
Name it to tame it. Once you know you're in a hole, look for a ladder. I absolutely love that. And that really brings us to the ultimate synthesis of everything we've talked about today.
It ties it all together.
The core message of this deep dive and of the fantastic multi-layered source material we've explored is a message of profound relief, honestly.
I agree.
Because after talking about neurobiology and timers and batching, it is crucial to state clearly that this is not about turning you, the listener, into a perfect, hyper-efficient, unfeeling robot.
No, please don't become a robot.
It is not about wringing every single drop of productivity out of your soul just so you can do more meaningless work for a corporation.
No, not at all. It is fundamentally about becoming more conscious of your own existence. The modern world, with its algorithms and its infinite scroll, is explicitly designed to drain your battery passively.
It's a system built to drain you.
It is engineered by thousands of very smart people to pull your attention in 50 different directions simultaneously. The concepts we've discussed today, understanding decision fatigue, recognizing the hamster wheel, implementing task batching, and setting timers to avoid rabbit holes, are not just productivity acts.
Yeah, more than that.
They are vital tools for cognitive self-defense.
Cognitive self-defense. That's brilliant.
It is about intentionally, fiercely choosing where your precious, highly limited time, energy, and attention go. It's about designing a daily architecture that allows you to build a life that feels significantly less crowded, less panicked, and far more deeply fulfilling.
It's about taking the time to close the background app so the phone can actually make the call it was designed to make.
Exactly.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you, the listener, with a direct call to action. The source material asks a brilliant, practical question, and I want you to literally answer this in your own mind right now, today.
Listen closely to this one.
What is one small, repetitive decision you could automate or eliminate to reduce decision fatigue in your daily life?
Just one thing.
Is it prepping your coffee maker the night before, so you just have to push a button?
Yeah.
Is it deciding right now that every single Tuesday is taco night for dinner, so you never have to expend cognitive energy thinking about it again? Find that one thing right now and eliminate it. Reclaim those gold coins.
And I will leave you with a final, provocative thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
Let's hear it.
Let's imagine you do exactly what we've discussed. You successfully automate your small morning decisions, protecting your prefrontal cortex and reclaiming your mental energy. You successfully set your 15-minute timers, avoiding the digital rabbit holes and reclaiming your time.
Okay, picture it.
You are standing there at your desk with a fully charged battery, a pocket full of gold coins, and a beautifully empty block on your calendar. What is the very first deeply meaningful thing you are going to actively create with all that newly reclaimed mental space?
That is the real question, isn't it? Because once you stop leaking your vital energy on the things that don't matter, you suddenly have the profound responsibility to decide what actually does. Good luck out there. Keep those background apps closed and keep learning.